Someone in the room is upset. The Western response, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? I'm here for you." The Korean response, "Nothing." A quieter voice. A slightly different topic. Food. Placed nearby, without explanation. The conversation shifted. Away from the difficult thing. Before anyone had to acknowledge. The difficult thing existed. Both responses came from care. Both responses read the room. But they read it differently. And they responded differently. And the person who was upset experienced something completely different, depending on which response they received. Western emotional intelligence says, name the feeling, acknowledge the experience, create space for expression. Korean Nunchi says, protect the person from having to perform their feeling in front of an audience that isn't ready to hold it properly. One approach centers the emotion, the other centers the person. This is K-logic. And today, we decode the difference. Western emotional intelligence, the framework developed by psychologists Daniel Goleman and others in the 1990s, has become the dominant global model for understanding social competence. Its core assumption, the most socially intelligent response to another person's emotional state is to recognize it, name it, and create conditions for its expression. Empathy, in this model, is the ability to feel what another person is feeling and to communicate that recognition. The goal is emotional transparency, making the invisible emotional state visible and acknowledged. Nunchi operates on a different assumption entirely. Nunchi does not prioritize making emotional states visible. It prioritizes reading them accurately, and then responding in the way that serves the person best, which may or may not involve acknowledgement. The distinction is fundamental. Western empathy asks, what is this person feeling, and how do I let them know I understand? Korean Nunchi asks, what is this person feeling, what do they need, and what response will serve them best, which may be direct acknowledgement, or maybe a quiet shift in the conversation that allows them to not perform their feeling in a social context where performing it would cost them something. Neither model is simply better, but they produce genuinely different social outcomes, and the gap between them is one of the most consistent sources of cross-cultural misunderstanding between Korean and Western social environments. The Western person who receives Nunchi-based care often misreads it as indifference. Nobody acknowledged my feeling, therefore nobody noticed. The Korean person who receives empathy-based care often experiences it as intrusive. They named my feeling in front of everyone, which required me to perform it, which cost me Chemyeon I didn't want to spend. Both parties were trying to care. Both failed to land. Protocol 1. The Chemyeon protection function. Nunchi performs a social function that Western empathy models do not account for. It protects the emotionally vulnerable person's Chemyeon. When someone is upset in a Korean social context, direct acknowledgement, I can see you're struggling. Do you want to talk? Does not just offer support. It also spotlights the person's emotional state in front of the social group. It requires them to either confirm the vulnerability, which costs Chemyeon, a visible emotional display in a group setting, or deny it, which requires a performance of being fine that adds social labor to an already difficult moment. The Nunchi response, the shifted topic, the food placed nearby, the quieter voice, the continued inclusion without spotlighting, achieves something different. It communicates awareness without requiring performance. The person who is upset receives the message that their state has been read and accommodated, without having to publicly acknowledge that they needed accommodation. This is care calibrated to the Chemyeon system. It is not the absence of empathy. It is empathy that has accounted for the social cost of its own expression. For international observers, this distinction is crucial. The Korean colleague who didn't say, "Are you okay?" is not demonstrating indifference. They are demonstrating a more sophisticated calculation, one that includes not just the emotional recognition, but the social consequences of how that recognition is expressed. Protocol 2. The reading versus the naming. The most significant structural difference between Nunchi and Western empathy is the relationship between reading an emotional state and naming it. Western empathy theory consistently emphasizes naming as a core component of emotional support. Research shows that naming an emotion reduces its intensity, that feeling seen and heard requires explicit verbal acknowledgement, that the most supportive response to someone's difficulty is to reflect their feeling back to them in words. Nunchi operates without this assumption. The Nunchi reader, who accurately reads a person's emotional state and responds with a quiet, practical accommodation, without ever naming the state, has performed a complete Nunchi response. The naming is not the point. The accurate reading and the appropriate response are the point. This produces a specific social experience that Western empathy training often misses. The feeling of being understood without having to explain yourself. Of having your state read so accurately that the response arrived before you had to articulate the need. In Korean social culture, this is the highest form of social intelligence. Not the explicit acknowledgement of feeling, but the accurate, automatic, socially precise response to it that demonstrates comprehension without requiring the other person to perform their vulnerability. The food that appeared without explanation. The topic that shifted at exactly the right moment. The slightly quieter voice that acknowledged without naming. These are Nunchi at its most precise. And the person who received them knows, without anything being said, that they were seen. If the Nunchi versus empathy distinction is reframing cross-cultural experiences you've had, subscribe to K-Logic. The care is always there. The operating system determines what it looks like. The Nunchi versus empathy distinction reveals something important about the cultural assumptions embedded in what we call social intelligence. The Western empathy model developed in a cultural context that values individual emotional autonomy. The right to have your feelings recognized, named, and witnessed. The assumption is that making feelings visible is inherently therapeutic, that the seen feeling is better than the unseen one. The Korean Nunchi model developed in a cultural context that values collective social harmony, the protection of everyone's face, the maintenance of the group's emotional temperature, the accommodation of individual need without disrupting collective function. The assumption is that the most caring response is not always the most visible one. Neither assumption is universally correct. Both are culturally contingent. What matters for the person navigating cross-cultural environments is understanding which model the other person is operating under, and resisting the instinct to read the other model's behavior through your own model's assumptions. The Korean colleague who didn't ask, "Are you okay?" was not indifferent. Read their response through the Nunchi model, and you will find the care that the empathy model's reading missed. The Western colleague who said, "Are you okay?" in front of the group was not intrusive. Read their response through the empathy model, and you will find the genuine care that the Nunchi model's reading processed as a Chemyeon violation. Both were caring. Both were operating correctly within their own models. The gap was not in the care. It was in the operating system. Every culture has social intelligence. What differs is what the intelligence is optimized to read, and what it considers the most caring response to what it reads. Western empathy is optimized for emotional recognition and verbal acknowledgement. It produces the specific experience of being seen through words, the named feeling, the explicit witness, the "I hear you" that confirms receipt. Korean Nunchi is optimized for social reading and protective response. It produces the specific experience of being cared for without being spotlit, the food that appeared, the topic that shifted, the presence that accommodated without requiring performance. Both experiences are real care. Both are meaningful. Both can fail when the receiver is running a different model than the giver. The cross-cultural competence that matters is not choosing one model over the other. It is developing enough awareness of both to recognize care when it arrives in a form your operating system isn't calibrated to receive. The food that appeared without explanation. That was care. The question that named your feeling in front of everyone. That was also care. The frequency was different. The signal was the same. If the Nunchi versus empathy distinction reframed something you've experienced, Hit like and subscribe to K-Logic. Because the most important thing about any social system is understanding what it looks like when it's trying to help you. K-Logic will continue decoding the invisible systems that make Korea one of the most logically fascinating societies on the planet. Because the source code was always there. You just needed to tune to the right frequency.